coffee. Belgian waffles.
My name is Jordan. I'm here with the Colorado School of Mines Maker Society. I'm going to go through the process of printing on an Ultimaker 3D printer. We're going to start from SolidWorks, go through saving it as an STL, slicing, uploading that code into the printer, and printing. So let's get started. Alrighty, so starting at SolidWorks, I've already got a finished part. This is in SolidWorks 2014. So what I'm going to do to get this get my solid part into something that I can print it as, I'm going to go to File, Save As, and then I'm going to go and select STL from this menu. Alrighty, it codes your part in triangles. So you can see we've got 5,480 triangles that make up the surface of our part, which is a lot simpler for Cura to read. That's the slicer we're going to be using. And I just hit OK, and it should be saved to my desktop, which is right here. Cool. So now if I open up Cura, Ultimaker Cura, I want to select the Ultimaker 3 Extended in the initial setup, and then it'll look like this. So what you can do is go to File, Open Files, and now I want to select that STL that I just saved, and I can open that. And it'll load in a minute here. Alright, so now that we have our part imported into Cura, it's sideways, which is not a good print orientation for it, so we need to rotate it. If I click on it, I'll get all of these menus. So the top one is Move, and I can translate along X, Y, and Z. I can scale it, but ideally, if you're creating a part, you just have it scaled the way you want it in SolidWorks or whatever other design program you're using. Rotate, which is what we're going to be doing, and mirror, if for whatever reason you need to mirror your part. And then you can change per model settings if you want to use dual extrusion and use different materials per model that you're printing. You can select the print head here. So if I go to rotate, I want to rotate it about this red axis, or the red wheel, and I'm going to snap it to 90 degrees, which is that blue box right there. And it automatically levels it on the bed. And now we've got it in an orientation that it'll print well. I'm going to move it to the upper corner, just so it'll be easy to get off. And now we're ready to change our settings and send code to the printer. So I have all of my settings over on the left here. We're only going to be using Extruder 1 today. Our material is going to be PLA, polylactic acid. You've got a whole bunch of options here. If for whatever reason you want to use something else, it'll give you very good general settings right away. And at the moment, we're just using the AA print core, but make sure that you have that selected because there are some other options. So if we go ahead and just use the recommended settings, it'll give us a pretty good settings right away. This is generally going to be good enough for whatever you're printing. But we're going to go ahead and run through the custom settings just so you know what everything is. You start by selecting your profile, and these are just really general detail. How nice do you want it to look? And we're going to print on fast because we don't care about this piece being really high resolution. If we go into the quality menu, our layer height is what we just selected. Our shell is the outer thicknesses, and those are all fine to be standard. If you need a stronger part, one of the things you can do is increase your shell thickness, and that'll give you a little bit more strength. Infill is how dense your part is, so it's not 100% dense on the inside, and that saves material, it saves print time, so you can change that here. 20% is a pretty good spot, but I really don't care about the strength, so I can just even take that to 10, and I'm going to speed up my print time a little bit by doing that. Material, here's where selecting your material up here really helps because you get a really nice profile right away. One important thing to note is that you're using 2.85 diameter filament. This might auto set to 1.75 if that's your first time using Cura, so having the width of the filament that you're using correct is important. If you're using a material like Bronzeville that's not in this material menu, I would look up settings online, or the material probably comes with recommended settings that you can plug into this menu here. Next is speed. These are also pretty standard. If you're using a material that's it doesn't already have a preset profile, I would probably look it up. It should come with the material that you buy, recommended settings. So, cooling is another one of those standard things. Some materials need cooling, some don't. That'll be built into this material profile. Support, depends on your part. If you have big overhangs, support will be important. So here our only overhangs are underneath this ridge here, and that's a pretty small angle, so we don't need support for this part. But that's just a checkbox, whether or not to have it generate support. And if you're using you can use a different filament for your support, so you could use something water soluble and not have to deal with support removal. And that's where you change that setting. Build plate adhesion is always something that's good to have on. Most parts that fail will fail because they come unadhered to the brim, or unadhered to the print bed. So brim is in general a good option. What that's going to do is it's going to put a single layer around your piece in a circular pattern up to the width that you set. So it's just more surface area on the bed holding your part down. If you want to do something else, raft builds a surface, so your part is no longer on the printer bed, it's on this artificial surface that you've created. It's pretty time consuming, it takes a lot of material, and I wouldn't recommend it unless you absolutely need it. And then skirt prints a line disconnected from your piece around it, and what that does is it just makes sure there's material in the printer head right when you start printing your parts, so there's no gap there. But I would pretty much always recommend brim, and 7mm brim width is a good place to start. And we're not going to be doing dual extrusion today, so I'm not going to look at these settings. So now it says ready to slice, so I can hit prepare to actually slice it. And what it's doing now is it's looking at my model and it's generating code that the printer can use. So I already have the option to save to my removable drive. I have my flash drive plugged into the computer. Some things to note here, my print time is going to be 57 minutes. It's going to use a meter of filament, which is about 8 grams of material. So it's not a ton of material that we're using. And I can save that to my removable drive, and it's saving the code to my flash drive. And now it gives me the option to eject it here. So I can take it, and we can take that drive to our printer. So now we're back at the printer. Normally this will be locked at the cable with one of our Bluetooth locks. So once you're certified through one of our workshops, you'll get access to this lock. And when you're using it, we want you to lock the cable lock around the cord, and then right when you're done, just lock it back around the head of the cable so it's secured. So I've already got it plugged in and ready to go. The printer will be off at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it. And then my power switch is back here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that guy on. And then I'm just going to turn the printer back around. Cool. And it's going to go through a loading sequence. Alrighty, so now that the printer's on, the first thing I need to do is load my material. And because there's no material already in there, I'm going to go through the loading and unloading process right now. So the first thing I want to go do is use this on the printer. You navigate everything using this scroll wheel. So you turn it to select the menu you want, or hover the menu you want, and then you click on it to select the menu. So to load the material, I want to go to Material-Printer Core, Material 1, and then I want to go to Load. And now the printer is going to do a few things, and then I'll interact with it. Cool. So once you click on Load, it's going to walk you through the whole process. So it wants me to place a new spool on the holder on the back. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. I can rotate the printer to make this a little bit easier for me. So now that I've got it rotated, I'm actually going to come over here. So I'm putting it into this tube, so I want the material to feed up into it. So I'm going to put it on in this orientation, and then I can just feed it in the back And using, on the other side, there's a lever just like this. This is a tension. So if I lift up on this, I'll be able to push the filament up into this tube, which is what I'm going to do now. And you can see the filament is just coming out of that tube, which is how we want it to be. So now if I go back to the front of the printer, we can see what it wants us to do next. So I've already placed the new spool on the holder. It's not detecting. This printer has a NFC scanner in the back of it, so it knows what certain materials are. This isn't going to be an issue that it didn't detect it, and we'll see that in a bit. Or we're going to go ahead and select the material now. I just put in PLA into the printer, so I want to select that. So now it wants me to insert it into feeder 1. I've already done that. That was when I lowered the tension and pushed the material into the tube. So now that I've done that, I want to hit confirm. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to heat the printer core, and then it's going to push the plastic through the tube into the printer core. So it doesn't want to push cold plastic into the hot end. And that's why it's heating first. So we've got to wait for that to heat now. Okay, so right now it's pushing the material through the tube and into the hot end. And it's going to slow down as it gets there. So now it's going very slowly. And what it wants me to do is it wants me to confirm when I see material coming out of the hot end. And that is going to take a moment. Alright, now I can see I've got a pretty steady flow rate of material coming out of there. I'm just going to grab that and get it disconnected. So I'm going to hit confirm on this menu here. And I can just go ahead and grab this right off. After the plastic has been out of the printer head for a second or so, it's almost at room temperature already. So you want to be aware of what's hot and aware of what's not, so you're not burning yourself or creating any issues there. But in general, you don't want to touch anything in here while the printer is in operation. That's a pretty good rule. There aren't very many ways you can hurt yourself on a 3D printer, and that's one of them. Cool. So now we're waiting for printer core 1 to cool down. And once it's done that, it'll let us use other menus. So I'm going to go through the unloading process now as well. So if you come in, the printer has already got material in it that you don't want in it. You're going to have to take it out before you can put new material in. So we're going to go to the, I guess I'll start at the main menu. So if I'm at the home menu, this is how the printer looks when I get it. I go to Material Printer Core, Material 1, and then I want to go to Unload. And it's going to go ahead and do most of this process on its own. So it's already taking the material out and back through this tube. Alrighty. And now it wants me to remove the spool from the spool holder. So I'm going to rotate the printer so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to pull the plastic out and take out the spool holder. Take out the spool. That's really how easy it is. So sometimes when you're loading material, this will happen, where in that initial fast, where it's feeding the material through quickly, it doesn't get anywhere near the printer head. So that would take forever for it to inch its way forward, so we're going to do it a faster way. So if you hit continue on that previous menu, when you were loading the material, what you can do is go to Material 1, which is the menu we're selected on, and then go to Move. And now we can move our material. Because it knows what material is in there, it knows what temperature it prints at, so it's going to heat itself up to it. And once we're at that temperature, we can scroll to manually move the material forward and backwards. So clockwise moves the material forwards, and counterclockwise moves the material in reverse. And you can see that in the tube. I'm just scrolling the wheel, and it's moving pretty quickly. And I'm going to wait until we're at print temp to get any closer than that. 195 is good, so I'm just going to go ahead and move it. I'm going to keep pushing material through pretty fast at first. I've still got about an inch after I can't see the tip anymore until I'm extruding. So now I'm going a little bit slower until I see some material. So you can see it bunched up there. I'm just going to kind of carefully grab that without touching the brass portion, because that's what's hot. And now I can move it through. And we're extruding at a good pace, so I can just click to return on this menu, and we're good to go. Cool. So now our material is loaded. We've got material right at the print head, so we're good to print. And now what I can do is plug in my flash drive that I saved my code to from Cura, and we can go ahead and print it. So the first thing I'm going to do on this menu is just return to home. So I'm going to go ahead and return again. And now I'm at the home menu. I'm going to take my flash drive and plug it into the USB section, USB area, I guess. And now hit print. And now here is my code that I previously saved. So Ultimaker 3 extended _ my STL name. That's how it saves your file by default. And I can click on this, and the printer's just going to go from here. So it's going to go through a few things, and it'll just start printing. And that's all there is to it. Alright, so the first thing it's going to do is it's going to actively level itself. The bed has force sensors in it, so it just taps the tip of the nozzle onto the bed at a few different locations. And that way it knows exactly where the bed is at all points, so it's defining that plane. The next thing it's going to do is it's going to heat the build plate and heat the printer core, so we're at printing temperature for everything. So it'll go through that process, and it gives you a status bar here while that's happening. One important thing to be aware of, if you're ever having a print issue, your print has failed for some reason, to avoid damage to the printer, what you want to do is abort your print as soon as you see that failure. So if I'm on this scroll wheel again, I can go to abort at any point, and if I click that, it will immediately end the print. So I'm definitely not going to do that. But that is a good thing to know. Alright, so now that we're done heating the build plate, it's telling us that we're heating the printer cores. So once that is finished, it'll start printing on its own. Alright, so now that we're done heating the printer cores, it's going to start printing. So the first thing it does is extrude this little plastic blob. And it does that to make sure that there's plastic in the printer head right away when it starts printing. And you can just leave that there. It shouldn't ever be a problem. If you have an opportunity to, it doesn't hurt to just move it out of the way. And the first thing it's printing is my brim. So it starts on the very outside of the brim, and it moves towards the inside. So in general, it's always good to watch at least the first few layers of your print. For the most part, if your part is going to fail, it's going to fail in the first few layers. So you want to be able to stop that immediately and figure out what went wrong and restart it. For the purposes of this video, though, we're just going to check back on this periodically to see how the print is doing. At this point, the printer does everything for you. You're not really involved, so you're good to just come back at the end. At the bottom here on your menu, you've got a status bar, so it tells you how much time is remaining on your print. So I'll be back a few times in this 57 minutes to show you guys how the print is going. Alrighty, so at the moment we are 5 minutes into the print, still 52 minutes remaining, and you can see we've got a little bit more than my whole first layer printed. At this point I feel pretty comfortable walking away and just coming back in 50 minutes to check on my print. Just one quick note though, at least for the Maker Society, you definitely want to close the doors to this acrylic enclosure if you're ever going to leave. That's for fume control. Most plastics that you're going to be using won't output any hazardous fumes, but some do, so it's always good to keep the thing closed. That's for the best. Alrighty, so our print is finished, and now it's ready to be removed. That's the only thing we have left to do. So if you come over here, you can see that it says print finished, carefully remove print from the build plate, which is what we're going to do. For the most part, once the bed has had a chance to cool, it'll just be able to lift right off. Sometimes it'll be adhered. So then what you would want to do is take a print bed removal knife, which I don't have one available right now, but it's just a very flat knife, thin knife, and you can scrape under it to unadhere the part. So that's that. We still have our brim, which is the build adhesion support that we used. I don't know a better way to phrase that right now. So we need to remove that, and let's come somewhere where we can see the two tools you want to. The one tool you want to have is an X-Acto knife. So if you come over here, you can start by just grabbing it as close to that boundary as you can, and you can just peel it off. And you can see it's not coming off exactly clean, but we're pretty clean here. So now what I can do is to get this last little bit of plastic off that I can't just grab, I can take my X-Acto knife, I can come at it at a 45 degree and just kind of carefully scrape it. And you want to make sure you don't cut yourself here. It doesn't feel too good. Yeah, so I'm just coming at it at a 45 degree angle, plus or minus, and trying to get off the entirety of this lip. And for what I'm doing, I guess I'm pretty happy with this. I could spend a little bit more time getting things like this ridge, but I'm not too upset, so. Alrighty, so there's one last thing to do. Once your print's finished and you've taken it out of the printer, we need to turn the printer off and relock the Bluetooth lock. So if I just reach behind here to the power switch we looked at earlier, I can just turn the whole thing off. It's off. And now if I go to the power cord, I can unlock my Bluetooth lock, which is already done. Unplug the printer, put the cord in here, and I'm locking the cable head to here. And I'm just going to relock. You know, in a little bit of time, we went from our SolidWorks part, we sliced it, we printed it, and now I have a physical piece out of something that was only digital a few hours ago. So that's pretty cool. And that's the whole process of 3D printing.
Belgian waffles.